Spaulding, or was
No,
it Zeiss?
She wrote Zeiss.
Zeiss.
Zeiss about, at the time, had used tattoo equipment, and I actually got the stuff in 72. And he sent me a liner and a shader, no foot switch, a clip cord, and an Aurora like slot car transformer. You just turned it on and it buzzed, and
No,
so,
on and off. It was either on or off.
Yeah, that was it. And you went to town with it. And
on Tattoos in Review,
I tattooed somebody that where I worked in the furniture store, the kid that lived upstairs. I went, "Hey, you want to get a tattoo?" He went, "Why?" And I did a skull with these round circles with wings coming off of it, which was my first one, which I never seen it after that, but I swear I should have never did it. The second one I did was the skull with the snake going through it from the Joneses sheet that everybody got, which I did that, and I went like, oh shit, I got this together. I thought I was a tattooer. And then I learned as I made mistakes and whatnot, and then bought more crap from them and wind up having it, and it was what it was. And then the original guy that I did the first tattoo I ever did, for money too, I didn't do him for nothing. He had a crisp, clean boxer boy with the clouds and a name that was printed that was done by Tony Polito. Mm-hmm. So I grabbed him and I went, "Where the fuck did you get that?" He went, "This guy on Lefferts and Albany Avenue on the other side of Brooklyn." I went, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah." I called Billy up. I went, "Billy, what are you doing?" I went, "Why?" I said, "Well, I'm finished eating." I said, "After that, we're taking a ride to go see this guy, Tony. This guy's putting out stuff that's like, you won't believe it." So we got there, and he had, off of the boiler room, the first shop, not the last one, was maybe as big as from this counter out to that wall. That was the whole thing. And then the boiler room was next door. If you had to pee in the boiler room where there was the runoff for the drain, you peed in there, or you peed in there. You had a slop sink, right, Glenn?
You had a slop sink.
Yeah, you had a slop sink, right? So that was the whole.
And he had the room on the other side where Carmine hung out.
Yeah.
And a bathroom back there.
Yeah, but he didn't let the general.
Unless he had a liking.
Yeah, right. He had a liking. He got most of the creme de la crap at the time, but at the time that was around 1970 when he came into being popular. Freddie had broken up with his first old lady, so there was really nobody. And Tony always gives the statement, "I was the only one around doing tattoos at the time." Yeah, because Freddie stepped out of the picture and they moved in. But you see, Tony's logic was, the Board of Health closes at 5 o'clock and they're not going to send nobody else out after 5, so he'd open at 5:30. And what made him also very popular, aside from the good work that he did, was that he was there guaranteed every night. He was supposed to be. There was other guys that would do it, but you always couldn't depend. Him was an A1 guarantee he'd be there. So the first night we went there, I went there with the acetate from this that I had cut. I wanted this parrot I wanted here, but at the time, he knew that nobody ever picks this fucking parrot. I mean, this peacock. He went, "How about that peacock?" I went like, "How about it?" Like, I wanted to get two down here. I had nothing here at the time. I just had up here. And I said, "Yeah, all right." So he went, "What are you doing with an acid? What are you doing with a stencil?" I go, "Well, who are you?" I said, at the time when I first started, I went by Rocco's tattooing to cover my tracks before, I figured, and then went to Ronnie's. But point being is, he did them, and he kind of took a liking, and all Billy got tattooed was Brooklyn on an angle in between work that Freddie had pretty much a lot of stuff on him. We didn't act like shitheads or nothing, and he liked us, and he had a little crowd, and he always had a crowd. And from that, went back again, and hung out, and didn't say much. Then wind up every 6 months, I almost get 2 tattoos, for some reason. Little by little, that was 72, into 73, he said, "What are you guys tattooing with? It's not wood, it's flesh. You're carving people up." And we told him, and at that time, to get Spaulding's address, you had a better chance of meeting the Pope. So
Yeah.
he gave us Spaulding's phone number. I called up Huck Spaulding here. I said, yeah, Huck, I'm interested in, getting your catalog and your machines and this and that. And he went, who gave you my number? I said, Tony Polito. He said, oh, if Tony Polito gave you the number, then there's no problem. I'll send you, at the time, he didn't even have the small book that he used to have from the 50s. All he had was, from the copier, pages printed out and stapled together, and he'd send you a black and white of the lightweight machine, a black and white of the Supreme, and of the power supply.
Right.
It was the little photographs, black and whites, and the price list and colors and all of that stuff. I had waited on that, and in August of that year, I had gotten my income tax money. It was $200 and something from my job. And I took my wife and my 2 kids on a Saturday. My boys were small. They were like probably under 5. We took a ride up to Albany, and he went, oh, man, you should have called. I went, well, I'm here. To this day, and I say this every interview, I swear, just not to lose the sale, he took 2 lightweights from somebody else that could tattoo because they had like strike marks on the piece that goes up, even though they were chromed over. He didn't have the black wrinkle power supply, because that's when he said, you should have told me. And all he had was a chrome one. So I'm one of the only ones.
So you got
around.
somebody's.
I got this chrome one that was $15 more, and Richie Montgomery says the only other person he knew of that had a chrome one was Pete Poulos, which I never knew until a while back when we were discussing it. I got that. I bought some colors already mixed. I bought some needles. I went home, and like, if my wife's girlfriend and husband came over, I went, hey, what are you doing? You got any tattoo? And I said, hey, how about getting a tattoo? So like, I took this machine out, dipped it, and like all of a sudden I was making lines like they're actually going in, and like, I'm not saying they were all perfect, but they worked. So I called Billy up and I said, Billy, these fucking machines are unreal. I said, they actually work. And he ordered them and wind up cursing me on the phone. Why did you tell me to buy this stuff for? It's shit. It doesn't even make a fucking scratch in the skin. And Tony Polito once told me Huck wouldn't send anything that would in the hands of somebody that didn't know tattoo machines. In other words, he'd set it up where it would hit softer and not carve you up, being you were a beginner. So that's why I feel that. So Billy was a machinist at trade, really, and he played and took the washers out and put more tension on the spring or whatever, and he got him, to work the way he wanted, because before that he had Jonesy. Everybody had Jonesy. I never, even when I had the option to, I never cared for the Jonesy machine in my hand. I didn't like the way it balanced. I had them as collector's items and this, that, and the other thing. But point being is, those I was comfortable with, then the Supreme. And then once in a while I'd take a ride up there and visit him and buy a machine or something. And he was always polite and nice. And, that's how it came along. And I just continued working during the day, coming home, eating dinner. And then I'd jump in the car and I'd ride all the way to Tony's, and I'd just sit behind where he was sitting in a chair and not say a word and just observe him tattoo, and not going like, how come you put the green in this way? How come you shaded? Nothing. Right. In other words, just absorbing what I saw and then going home and trying what I did, and that was it, Once I had mentioned to him that somebody came to me and wanted to get tattooed, and I says to the guy, you got any tattoos? He went, yeah, Tony did this on me. I went, oh, I'm not really doing any tonight. And I said to myself, how can I compete with something that this guy did? So when I told Tony, he says to me, listen, what is it you want to do? I went, what do you mean? He goes, do you really want to do this and tattoo? I went, yeah, it's all I want to do. He goes, well, don't worry about what I'm doing. The guy down the block's doing. Do whatever you got to do, he goes, if you really want to do this. And from that day on, I just kept doing what I did. And I was fortunate at one point, he made me shade of needles. He took me in the back where nobody was, and he gave me green at one point. And he liked me being there, and he liked Billy also. I'd still get tattoos and whatnot, and it revolved from there where I had done a bird on a guy's chest, and he said, "When did I put that bird on you?" So the kid turned around and says, "You didn't, Ronnie did it." He went, "That's what I get for giving him green and fucking needles." They had to say, them guys, what they had to say. And I didn't give a shit, you know what I'm saying? So, because I said to the guy, "What did he say?" He says, he went on about, the whole thing about that.
Let me ask you a question. Was Polito as fast as everybody says he was?
Yes. And the reason why, like I was saying before, was not only speed-wise with outlining, but also he didn't take the time to wipe you 59. In other words, it was getting the tattoo done.
Right.
You walked out with more ink on you than you... that's the truth. Because I always looked and went, holy shit, this guy's got like fucking oodles of fucking ink all over his arm, And, there was no wall. It was the next guy. And he was very much on... Tony wasn't as diplomatic as I was, Pete was, others. He was, who's the next case? Oh, you want that one? Why don't you get something? Everybody was getting the Coney Island Freddie Christ head with the cross behind it. Mm. That was a Brooklyn thing. And he was like overwhelmed with like, don't you guys ever pick anything else like? And Tom DeVito once said, I started going to Tom's like in 75 and got this Panther from him, was the first one that I'd seen on somebody else, and I liked the way he left it highlighted, because I never liked the crawling Panther by itself that everybody had, or the hot stuff that my friends would get. I wouldn't get those tattoos. I mean, I wound up getting later on this Panther and Snake. The only reason why we fit this in here was because unknowingly I had this little sailor boy that Dracula did in Camden, which I got fooled by because he opened up down the block from Sailor Eddie's and put Eddie Tattoo. Me not knowing nothing, once again, my wife and 2 kids in a carriage, I think that this is Sailor Eddie's. I look at his face and I go to myself, what the fuck is this? And you went upstairs in a shithole, and he had his machine in like a boiling water thing of a tray this big where he kept it, and he didn't use a stencil. He had sheets that were outlines of the design you were going to get, and he'd look at the sheet and take the machine freehand and tattoo you. The only thing was, this sailor boy was supposed to be this big. That's how big he made the sailor boy. He started on the hat.
2 inches?
Yeah, he started on the hat and then went down on it. He also did a name back here of Ronnie's name, but he did it so shitty, and then later on I had Zeke do the whole top of my arm and all this fill-in and dragons and everything running through it, and I had my second tattoo that was a Panther head covered up.
It's funny that you're telling that story, though, because I interviewed Sailor Eddie Jr., and he talked about Jack Dracula doing that.
Yeah.
Basically, he was trying to steal business.
Oh, yeah. Well, also, him and Eddie had a dispute. You see, Sailor Eddie was in Philadelphia before he was in Camden.
Yeah.
And then he went over to Camden because something happened, according to Eddie's testimonies. The age limit was 21 in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So that's why he went over there. Eddie came into the picture after they closed New York, went to Hawaii, went to Chicago, wound up in Philly. Found a place that Daffy Grossman had with his wife. The store was empty. A Chinese lady owned it. He rented the store. I don't know how he turned it around. He got it to be 18 years old. And from that, those two never got along. And then at one point, he went and rented a building on Broadway up the street from Sailor Eddie's also. That he put Tommy Knapp in to run. All right? And Coney Island Joe. No, Coney Island Joe, I think, worked for Sailor Eddie, and then they had a dispute. Well, anyway, what happened there was Sailor Eddie turned around and bought the building and threw Eddie out of the building. that part was, told.
One of the parts that makes me interested in talking with you is tattooing during the time of the band. I was always curious about that because you hear the stories of the Coney Island guys before, and then obviously after the band.
Yeah.
But it's you guys in the middle that I don't feel like a lot of people will give a lot of credit to.
We were there.
Well, how are you getting away with it?
It was once the neighbors or the police knew that you weren't dealing drugs, they had no problem, and you weren't tattooing 15 and 14-year-olds. There was no reason to cause any havoc. Also, the way you conducted they were coming into your place. I was lucky because I lived on the ground floor on the avenue behind the store. So all you had to do was walk straight back. You didn't have to go up anybody's stairs and disturb anybody. Even though I had a lady that lived there forever that was trying to break my balls about the tattooing until I got in the face and said, look, this is what it is, and leave me the fuck alone. And that was that. I stayed there till 77.
On the next episode. So when you were tattooing here, was it legal?
No.
No, right?
What was legal?
Tattooing.
In Brooklyn?
No, here.
Oh, yeah.
Who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
Thanks for watching.